Michael Jackson is without question the world's biggest artist ever, and his untimely death on June the 25th, 2009 sparked outrage, shock and global mourning across the planet, with many finding it hard to come to terms with his untimely death. Many still do not accept this and have put together a pretty compelling argument that suggests that he is still alive today and this was all one big hoax. The circumstances surrounding Michael Jackson's death are certainly suspicious. Conrad Murray, who was Jackson's personal physician at the time, has always maintained that Michael injected the fatal drugs propofol that would ultimately kill him. But despite his claims of innocence, Conrad Murray was sentenced to 4 years in prison, in which he served 2. Murray's reputation has never recovered. Due to the suspicious nature of the events leading up to Jackson's death, this has led to heavy speculation as to whether Jackson died at all. Was this purely an exit strategy to get him out of playing the 49 shows at the O2 Arena, a record-breaking number? Was this simply Michael's way of fulfilling his desire to live a normal life? Was his death a mischievous plan by Jackson to get one over on the media who had plagued his life? Was this a way of clearing his mounting debts? With Jackson's bipolar and eccentric nature, this could also have been a way just to feed his curiosity, seeing firsthand how the world would react upon hearing the news he was dead. There is now a huge online community that is still putting forward pretty remarkable pieces of mounting evidence to suggest that Michael Jackson is still alive today. So, we dig deep into this conspiracy a little bit further and decide whether Michael Jackson did in fact stage his own death and has successfully pulled off the greatest hoax in history. It was on the eve of a 50-date residency London O2 tour when it was alleged that Michael Jackson was found unconscious at his home in LA by Conrad Murray, after allegedly taking a lethal dose of sedatives that were left by his bedside. The final days leading up to that fateful night had clearly put Michael Jackson under a lot of pressure. After his initial agreement just to perform 10 shows, this was quickly raised due to demand up to an unprecedented 50-date tour. Jackson frequently stated throughout the build-up to the tour that this was the final curtain call. Conrad Murray makes an easy candidate to blame for Jackson's death. His past reveals some rather shady activity, and was only employed by Jackson 11 days prior to his death, which begs the question about the alleged drug den that the police walked into. These drugs would have had to have been at the scene prior to Conrad Murray's employment. Could Murray have been a co-conspirator in Jackson's fake death? Jackson had frequently used illness as a means of seeking media attention, something that he learned from Elizabeth Taylor. From December 2008 to February 2009, it was reported that Michael was suffering with serious skin infections, had emphysema, needed 2 lung transplants, had intestinal bleeding, and was regularly pictured using a wheelchair. Yet 2 days prior to his death, he was seen bouncing around stage like he'd never left it. He was in great form for all intents and purposes. It must be noted that AEG, the concert promoters, took out an insurance policy covering accidental death of Michael Jackson, and it was made specifically clear that death ensuing from an overdose and drug abuse is covered, not natural death. Did AEG have a premonition that Michael would die within a few months, possibly caused by prescription medication? It does seem highly suspicious. Then we have the mortuary pictures. If we analyse this picture, we can clearly determine that this was a very badly constructed Photoshop job, which only seems to pour more fuel onto the conspiracy theorists' argument. Firstly, what you will notice is that this picture has been taken with a potato. Yes, the bad quality of an image is usually used when trying to mask edits. Note that the head appears to be connected to nothing. There is no obvious neck to be seen. There appears to be a cut line just above the jaw. The left shoulder is anatomically corrupt. There seems to be no real definable wall or floor to which the gurney is related. The eyes are shut. The nose does not appear to be the same as the real Michael Jackson's. The edge of the image near the head is also corrupt. There's no real edge to the end of the mattress or the top of the head. The hair appears to be computerized coloring as well. With this in mind, my honest opinion is that this is a very amateur attempt at faking a photo. Why the need to fake a photo, and how was this picture ever released to the public? I should also mention that Michael Jackson's death certificate was not signed by Conrad Murray, who refused to sign it, as did the physicians and the coroner's office. An alternative theory making the rounds online was that it was actually a terminally ill a look-alike who took the place of Jackson during his final days. A paramedic who transported Jackson to the hospital said in court, "He was very pale and underweight. I thought perhaps this was a hospice patient. He looked like someone who was at the end stage of a long disease process. The patient appears to be chronically ill. This would appear to contradict the footage showing him bouncing around on stage just days before his death." As you will notice with all false flag hoax events, the victim's family's strange behaviour is normally a surefire giveaway that something does not quite add up. This has been particularly evident during the Madeleine McCann case and also the Sandy Hook hoax. So let's look at how the Jackson family reacted just hours after they learned of Michael Jackson's untimely death.
I was asking him, he said he'd come on in here. You're Lundell, right?
Yes, sir.
He says he had some concerns about the last moments of his son's life, about who may have been around him. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, we can't talk about that now. There's a second autopsy that's underway, and we'll let that process take its course at this time. We'll have more to say about that at a later point.
About that. Have you spoken at all to the doctor at all?
No, I have not.
No. Do you know anything, Mr. Jackson, about funeral arrangements? Have you had time to?
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that yet. Yeah, but we're working on that.
Yeah.
This is Marcia here. I want you to
Thank you. How is, you said your wife is, what about Janet and the rest of the family, the daughters and everything?
They're all doing fine. But I want to make this statement. This is a real good statement here. Marshall and I we own the record company called
Ranch Records.
Right.
Okay, distributed by Blu-ray Technology. And that's his next step.
And that's your next step. There had been, talk to us about your 60th wedding anniversary.
As you can see, Joe Jackson's main priority there seems to be pushing his new record label than mourning the death of his son. Jermaine Jackson has also admitted during an interview with ABC News and in a book, You Are Not Alone, that he'd planned with Jackson to escape to Bahrain before the jury came to their verdict during the 2005 sex abuse trial, where he categorically states, "They would have never caught me." It's interesting to note that on the day of Michael Jackson's death, flight records from LA show an unknown flight to Guadalajara, Mexico. Did Michael escape before the media furore? You can still view the flight records today. I'll leave a link below. One of the most remarkable interviews was this one from a chap called Dave, who appeared on the Larry King Show, which aired just a few months after his death.
Joining us now here in Los Angeles, Miko Brando, who was with us almost every night after this untimely passing, longtime Michael Jackson friend attending the funeral, and Dave, yes, that's his name, Dave. He was David Rothenberg. He was set on fire in 1983, suffered, as you can see, terrible scars. Michael Jackson befriended him and paid for a lot of his surgeries. Dave is also attending the burial. Why Dave?
Well, to liberate myself from the confines of my father's criminality.
He caused the fire?
Yeah. He is a criminal, and he caused all this. To free myself of his name and his legacy, I decided to become my own person through changing my name.
We'll find out how
Is this Michael Jackson? Was this his way of mischievously facing the world using one of his many disguises? It's hard not to see the similarities, the voice, the face, and also the backstory of how he was mistreated as a child. Jackson's death has been an extremely lucrative financial situation for the family. His estate has raked in over $2 billion since his death, and he's earned more dead than he ever did when he was alive. Aside from the financial gain, for someone who spent their whole life being followed by cameras and never had the chance to live a normal life, the money comes second to the opportunity to spend the rest of your life anonymous. And this would have been the ultimate motive, should there have been one, for him to fake his own death. The bottom line of this is that Michael Jackson considered himself Peter Pan. He lived in Neverland. Jackson was a strict vegetarian and only ate one meal a day. Given all this, he was a very healthy person. So why would he kill himself with prescription drugs? The claims that suggest he was an addict have yet to be proven. And despite the sensationalized claims in the media that drugs were confiscated from the Neverland Ranch during a prior investigation, it later turned out just to be a few vials, which suggested nothing to do with an addiction at all. There are reports that Michael had tried to fake his death earlier in the year, after telling the media he was bedridden and needed a lung transplant. But despite this, very little interest was displayed by the general public. So he may have needed a much more controversial plan to capture the public's attention. And what better way of achieving that than by going out in a blaze of flames, taking a drugs overdose? That's the most rock and roll thing you can do. I genuinely hope this hoax is true, as many who knew Jackson can confirm he loved to play prank and used disguises regularly. So I'm crossing my fingers that he is out there somewhere alive today, and his passion for performing and the thrill of being back on stage will eventually bring him out from hiding.